Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're going to talk about some Blu-ray sales. So everything's been going in a tizzy because everyone who is the pro Last Jedi crowd, who's going to defend it no matter what, is going to ignore all the plot holes, ignore how the fact that it is objectively narratively flawed. And I'm sorry, but if you cannot understand why hyperspace ramming destroys the Star Wars universe, then there is no hope for you anymore. But their big thing that's been coming out is the fact that, oh my goodness guys, Star Wars Last Jedi is the #1 selling Blu-ray. Oh my goodness guys, did y'all see that? Oh my goodness, did y'all see that? Yeah, you were wrong. Okay, for one, you need to actually look at the numbers as they are coming out and what they actually say. And secondly, just shut up. Anyway, so as you see, these are the current top-selling Blu-rays of 2018. #1 on there is currently The Last Jedi with 3 million units sold, around $69 million. And Black Panther is the second highest grossing with 2.6 million in 2018 with $59 million. Now, the reason why I mention these two specifically is because to me, this is probably one of the best case studies to explain why Star Wars Last Jedi is not going to be the top grossing, the highest selling Blu-ray of 2018 when everything is said and done. And also why the numbers for Star Wars Last Jedi is selling, the Blu-rays sales that is actually very disturbing and is actually looking very, very bad for the movie going forward. And so let's first start off by looking at a few numbers. So as we see here, Black Panther made $1.3 billion. Again, technically $346 million. And this was a very successful film. Again, it made a huge profit. It did very well, not just in the United States, but also foreign as well. But as you see, the biggest number there was in the domestic market. And the reason why is because, as I said this constantly before, I think that the numbers for Black Panther were artificially high. Not, at least for the critic ratings, that is. And the main reason why is because this is a story that connects more so with American audiences than with any other audience around the world. No one's going to understand the significance of this film except for American audiences. And you can see that very plain and clear. The fact that this movie made more in the United States than it did foreign is a very big deal because this usually does not happen. Big budget films normally make their vast majority of profit overseas comparatively. Now, as you can see, both numbers are pretty damn good. Again, 700 million to 646 million. That is very, very good. However, it is still something to look forward to because it does show that there is definitely a cap to how much this film can make, because it can only make so much in the United States, and if it doesn't connect with the global audiences in the future, that could end up seeing a much lower number going forward. But again, Black Panther overall, again, for me, it was a B-level film. I know that there's a lot of people that love it, but again, I look past all the political nonsense and look at it as just a film, and there are indeed flaws. Let's compare that to Star Wars Last Jedi, made less than Black Panther, mind you. So worldwide, $1.3 billion, $332 million, and we see from here, again, we see a more normal take where 53.5% was made overseas and domestic it was 46.5%. However, that's a very tight scenario. So it's interesting because this pretty much flies in the face of reason. But again, when you understand the historical context and the historical relevancy of this film to the United States, it makes a lot of sense as to why it did this kind of a flip where it made more domestically. Star Wars, on the other hand, doesn't have that luxury because there is no real historical relevancy to this. Instead, what we see is that, yes, it did well overseas, it did well in the United States, but not nearly as well as it could have. Remember that Star Wars The Force Awakens made over $2 billion, and this film made a lot in the very first couple weeks, and then it just started to die. It just started to plummet as far as ticket sales go. And the reason why is because word of mouth finally came out, and people realized, oh, it's not that good of a film. And we can really look to that for both of these films by looking at the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Again, I made a video for Geeks and Gamers explaining Rotten Tomatoes, so if you want to know a little bit more about how Rotten Tomatoes actually works, please go check out that video. It really, I think, will help explain a lot of these things. But we look at this, and again, there's that artificially high 97%. And the reason why I say that is because this film has flaws. And I feel like this is more of a film that 85% of critics should like. However, the reason why it's so high is because of the fact that all these critics come in with their biases, and they come in and instead they forgive these problems. They forgive these problems with pacing, these problems with CGI, other things, because they let their political agendas pretty much drive forward their narrative. And again, this is something that we can see constantly in all films. This is a bit of a different scenario because this actually is a good film. Again, there is nothing really, really bad about this film, other than, of course, the fact that it's not a perfect film. It's not the best film that's come out of Marvel, and I'm sorry, it's not the second coming of Christ when it comes to films. Again, people are going to keep trying to push that narrative, but that's just not the case. And when you look at the audience score, you can understand a little bit more about that. That's why I always say when we read Rotten Tomatoes, it's usually a better place to start and look at the audience score because it tells you how entertaining it is. And 79% is very good. A 4.1 out of 5 is a very good score. So again, audiences really liked it, but still, it's around that B range for me. Now we look to Star Wars: The Last Jedi. 91% of critics liked it. Why is that the case? Because it was made for them. It was made for them in mind. It was made for Rian Johnson in mind because he didn't make it for the fans. He didn't make it for general audiences. And how can we know that? Because we look at the audience score. 45%, keep this in mind. This is not counting half-star scores. This is not counting a large portion of scores. And of course, some people say, oh, well, also you could talk about how there are some high-ranking scores as well that might be counted, etc. And I understand that's kind of the argument that's usually made, but the fact remains that no matter what, 45% is abysmal. The fact that Rotten Tomatoes very well could, artificially inflate either score here, well, specifically the audience score, and no one really would be the wiser, doesn't really take away from the fact that 45% is still awful if that is actually the case, if they are actually doing that. 2.9 out of 5 is not a very good score. Again, this out of 201,000 user ratings. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the critics may have loved it. Again, it wasn't really made for anyone except for, the Hollywood elites in mind, and so therefore the audiences were left in the dust. And we were left with a film that is filled with plot holes. It might look pretty, but it's filled with plot holes. Again, I was giving my man a shout out, Matthew Kadish. Go check his stuff out. Again, he dives so deep into this and explains why it. And he just did another article, and I cannot wait to read it, where there was someone who tried to rebut and say, "Oh, the people saying plot holes, they don't know what plot holes are. They're misusing the terms." Like, no, I understand what a plot hole is, and so does Matthew Kadish. And Matthew Kadish does a great rebuttal. Again, I'm only about a minute or two into the piece, but he's already doing a great job, just knocking it out of the park. So please go check him out. But what we know from this is that audiences did not like this. And we can see that once again when we look to the actual scores. Because as I said before, most of the money for this film was made in those first 2 weeks. It made roughly 70% of its entire gross in the first 2 weeks. I did videos on this months ago talking about this, and it's still relevant to this day because when we look at that fact, when we look to the fact that it dropped off, when we look to the fact that the audience rating is very low, it means and tells us that people are not going to be buying this Blu-ray as much as other films. For example, Black Panther, people loved it. People liked it. The audience rating was very high, so guess what's going to happen very soon? Those units are going to easily surpass The Last Jedi, which means the total spending, the total gross Blu-ray-wise is going to be even higher. In fact, when you look at DVD sales, it's already surpassed it, and Star Wars: The Last Jedi is actually ranked 7th or 8th. So obviously it's doing well on Blu-rays because that's mostly what people buy these days. However, it is still telling that when you do look to the DVDs, you've already seen what is eventually going to happen, which is that films like Black Panther, maybe even Thor Ragnarok, maybe Coco, more so Coco because obviously we have younger audiences and families buying those films, but Thor Ragnarok I think has a pretty good chance as well. But still, it's still worth noting that eventually we are going to see that flip. Eventually we are going to see this happen. And the reason why, once again, is because audience rating matters, because if an audience hates a film, if over half an audience hates the film, that's going to affect how many people buy it down the road. It's the same reason why we can look to Solo, for example. It made nothing at the box office, which is why it's going to make next to nothing when we look to the overall sales. But look, 3 million units sold here. Well, why is that relevant? Well, let's go back to 2017. The highest grossing film, or rather the one that sold the most units at this point, again for the year at least, was Rogue One. It's sold so far 3 million units, at least within 2017, $64 million, which actually is less than what Wonder Woman made with 78 million, which is actually kind of interesting. However, it still technically had the most units sold, but still, that's a very close number to what The Last Jedi is at. So Rogue One is technically doing better than what The Last Jedi did. So The Last Jedi obviously has a little bit more time to pick up those numbers, and I think that it will end up outranking Rogue One, but still, the fact that an episodic film is not doing as well as a one-shot Rogue One is telling you a lot about the film, especially since this film grossed less at the box office. Then we go back to 2016 and we see a very different story. So the biggest one for 2016 was Star Wars Episode 7: The Force Awakens with 5.5 million units sold and $141 million. So what does that tell us? Well, we look at 141 million versus 64 versus $69 million. And we look at that and we say, wait a minute, something's not right here. Something is not really adding up. And what that is, and what we see from that is that Last Jedi is still roughly around 50% of what The Force Awakens made. Now, is it probably going to close the gap a little bit? Maybe. But at the end of the day, what you have is you have The Force Awakens, which was a decent film. I know some people still disagree with that. It was a decent film. did very well at the box office, did very well with critics and audiences alike. The fact that people love to blame, oh, you know, it's just the toxic fan base that drove down the score for Last Jedi. Well, then why didn't they do that for The Force Awakens? You know, why didn't they do that for Solo? Even Solo has technically a fresh rating, at least a 64%, I think, last time I checked from the audiences. So why is that the case? Could it possibly be because this film is actually bad and people don't actually want to own it? I know that I never plan on buying this film ever in my entire life, and the next time that I plan on watching this film is when Ivan Ortega's cut finally comes out, because it looks beautiful. And guys, if you have not checked out his trailer for The Last Jedi, it looks fantastic. But I just wanted to break this down for you guys because it is important to understand box office numbers, what that means for an overall film, what that means for the Blu-ray sales of the film, and also why ratings matter so much. Again, because of the high critic rating and because of the high audience rating, this film is going to outsell The Last Jedi very easily. And the reason why is because also, not only did that do well, but also the audience score here is terrible because people don't want to buy it. And that's all there is to it. So anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts on this? Do you think that Star Wars Last Jedi is going to be the highest grossing Blu-ray of 2018? Let me know your thoughts below. Again, I really don't think at this point, especially when you look at the fact that when you look at these two different things, you look at the fact that The Last Jedi, I said that a lot, I'm so sorry, but you look to how this film came out. The Last Jedi came out on Blu-ray March 27th. Black Panther came out May 15th. So not only does The Last Jedi have a 2-month advantage at this point, but also we understand those numbers once again, 79% versus 45%. So there is still a lot of time left in 2018. Again, few more months before 2018 ends. Black Panther is going to be a very big seller. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a very big seller over Christmas and over the holidays. So it's going to do very well, and I cannot wait to revisit this just to confirm my suspicions when we end up seeing Black Panther, maybe even other films, because again, Coco is going to do very well during the Christmas season as well, and how it possibly outranks The Last Jedi. And if The Last Jedi is at 3rd or 4th, it will be the first Star Wars film to not be #1 on Blu-ray sales, and that should be very telling of the current state of Star Wars and also the future direction of Star Wars. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. You are all amazing. We are on the drive to 5, and we cannot wait. And I personally, especially, cannot wait to reach 5K because I really do want to do something very special. So again, keep your ideas coming through the Discord. If you ever want to join our Discord, please watch one of the live streams. I drop the links during that time because I want to make sure that the people on the Discord are people that actually watch the streams and are very active in the community. So be on the lookout for that. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great night. And as always, God bless.